If you're watching this channel, it's because you don't enjoy watching the world squander what Christendom built, but you want to do your part. And chances are you've heard me mention a great means by doing just that. Email made by and for Catholics. Check out fidei.email. That's FIDEI.email. Built for Catholic individuals, families, organizations, and groups. They're private, secure, and of course, they're Catholic. And they're offering 2 months off on your first year for an annual subscription if you enter the coupon code Return to Tradition without spaces. That's the name of this channel, without spaces, at checkout.
What are the limits? This is a question that we should always be asking ourselves as traditional Catholics. It's a question that I know some are wrestling with in light of this so-called trad recovery organization that I can't help but laugh at every time I see them, anything about them coming up in my social media feed. But it is a good question. What are the limits? The limits to our resisting Rome. What are the limits to recognize and resist? Is recognize and resist going too far? Some would say yes, some would say no, and some would say it's complicated. And the issue is a complicated one, because there are some who have obtained what would be on paper illicit ordinations to the priesthood and illicit consecrations to the episcopal office without the permission of Rome from bishops or priests in questionable standing with Rome, some of whom operate as independent actors who have valid holy orders, but they don't have the toolkit that goes with that. They don't have the permissions, the faculties of the Vatican from the Holy Father to do these things. And for a lot of people who think only Francis is the problem and thinks we'll return back to normal once we get a John Paul III or a Benedict XVII or something, this is probably a question that you are wondering, why is this a question? You should just wait Francis out. But for many traditional Catholics, in fact, for most traditional Catholics, people who call themselves a traditional Catholic, they recognize that the problems in the church include everybody before Francis, going back to basically the second half of Pius XII's reign in the after-war years. So the question begins, what are the limits? And for religious communities especially, this is a big problem. I have featured stories before of priests, fairly high-profile priests in religious communities who received, quote, illicit ordination to the priesthood. I have an offer for an interview from probably one of the highest profile priests of that, and I'm probably going to take him up on it after Lent is over completely, once we get past Easter, which is tomorrow. So the question here is, as we go over the story, is have this religious community crossed the line? And if they did, when did they cross the line? Because you're about to look into an organization here that is not the SSPX and that are not sedevacantists, but they have been an independent organization since the 1970s. And they have just consecrated one of their priests as a bishop without the permission of Rome. So we go to Instagram, a place I almost never use, and here we go to the page for the Servants of the Holy Family. They're a religious order or religious group out of Colorado. And they posted on the 19th of March, this without any fanfare, barely got any attention from anybody in the media. They said here's our post, and they show a picture of their priest now dressed as a bishop. Here's their post. On the feast of St. Joseph, Tuesday, March 19th, our Father Superior was consecrated a bishop. The consecrating bishop also ordained Father Brown in 2020 and can be found in the Annuario Pontificio, which includes all the bishops in the Catholic Church. We all thank God, the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary and her spouse, our loving patron and protector, St. Joseph, who arranged for this tremendous gift to be given to us on his feast day. Bishop Anthony D. Ward has chosen for his episcopal motto the following words from Psalm 118, I have chosen the way of truth. End quote. Now, again, the priest who was ordained is now Bishop Anthony D. Ward, and his ordination is valid inasmuch as, yes, he received the episcopal consecration from a bishop without permission of Rome, but someone who did have the authority to do it in terms of sacramental authority, but without the faculties, the permissions of Francis, or whatever, if you don't think Francis is the Pope. this is an organization that has been told by the local bishop, or when the local bishop is asked by the faithful about their standing, they are told, as I found on one social media post, that they are, quote, not in good standing with the diocese or the Universal Catholic Church. And meaning that they are considered schismatic by the local bishop. But again, I don't know what that means in this day and age, because the SSPX have never been declared to be in schism by anybody with the authority to do it. Yet plenty of good cardinals and good bishops, Burke among them, say they are in schism, while other good bishops and good cardinals say they're not. Bishop Athanasius Schneider has written extensively about why the SSPX are not in schism. So this is not so cut and dry. This organization has existed since the 1970s, and this isn't the first illicit ordination or consecration they've had. So I go here to traditioninaction.org. This goes back into 2020. They had this post. It says, with the headline, "Our Friends of the Servants of the Holy Family, New Priest Ordained." And so here there's just the post for that. Quote, "Below is a photograph and the information about the ordination of Father Brown. Thank you for sharing this good news with your readers. The ordination of a priest is always a happy event, and this one has even more significance. Not only do we have another priest to offer the traditional Latin Mass, but this ordination shows the love, generosity, and fortitude of a bishop willing to ordain in the traditional rite. It is such encouraging news during a challenging year which has been filled with enough sadness. This is also a consolation in seeing the true faith is being passed on to the next generation. Hopefully, many young people will be inspired as well. As I mentioned during our conversation, here's a link to our bishop's page. We will pray for you and your apostolate, and I will contact you as soon as we can schedule the Gloria Mass for your friend, etc., etc., etc. Signed, Reverend Michael J. McMahon, another one of the priests there. Not the priest who was ordained recently into being a bishop, who is, again, now Bishop Anthony D. Ward. By the way, Bishop Ward, if you're seeing this, I would love to have a conversation with you, actually. Open invitation. We will make it work. Now, that post links to this page. This is their bishops, and it says, "Our bishops." Note the plural, bishops with an S. And when you look through here, it gives you a timeline of events. One of the things you find here is that almost no bishops are actually named. Let me just throw out a few random examples here. In 2001, a religious order, North American Ordinary, authorized her community to tonsure members into the clerical state. That was in 2001. A North American Ordinary. We don't know what that means. A religious order, North American Ordinary, authorized our community to administer full minors, and this was done. That would be full minor orders. Those were abolished by Vatican II, and are one of those things that even like many moderate theologians who are not sold on traditional Catholicism tend to think was a bad idea, with a lot of consequences, the abolition of the minor ordained orders. You get a few kind of references here. You get Augustine Cardinal Mayer, who was, if you're familiar with the history of the SSPX, he's an important figure with that. You get Archbishop, later Cardinal Francis Stafford, represented them in their cases they've had with Rome. But you see lots and lots and lots of references here to a North American Ordinary. You get Bishop James Connolly appointed by Cardinal Hoya as a special delegate in their case with Rome back in 2008, but he's not the one doing their ordinations. Okay. Faculties for penance given in our local diocese through Cardinal Hoyos. Again, you get some names, but look at this. 2013, confirmations by auxiliary of an Asian archdiocese. That's interesting. I wonder if the auxiliary of that auxiliary bishop got permission from the Bishop of Colorado, at that part of Colorado at the time, to do it. I kind of don't think so. Confirmations and ordinations to the holy priesthood in 2020 by a retired ordinary. Yes, retired ordinary, and they never, ever, ever name who this was. And I totally understand why they wouldn't name this. It causes a lot of problems for them. So again, I have no ill will towards them. I'm happy to see another traditional priest and think that we have long since entered into Operation Survival for the traditional faith. But the question here is, how far is too far? If we have entered into Operation basically Survival, I believe that's how now Father Martin Navarro has described it in an article he wrote before he himself received an illicit ordination to the priesthood. if we've entered that, then illicit ordinations are fine, if that's where we are. But again, there's a countervailing argument that says, wait until Francis is gone. Because there are people who believe that once we get a more moderate pope, things will be fine. And that is really the dividing line between traditionalists and non-traditionalists. That the idea that once we get a moderate pope, things will go back to normal. The post-conciliar normal is not normal in the life of the church. That's the problem. All you have to do is go back to the writings of the popes before the councils, and you'll begin to see that we began having real problems with modernism before Vatican I. They didn't call it modernism, but what they were writing against, errors in the clergy and erroneous ideas held by high-profile laity that that the popes, Gregory XVI, was condemning and others, they would be what would get called modernism later by Pope St. Pius X. Now, other traditionalists would say you should align yourself with the SSPX because at least you have some quasi-legitimate state there, because the SSPX have at least been in communication with Rome and have been trying to work their situation out with Rome, where others have gone fully independent. There's a whole lot of these organizations out there. So I'm very curious, again, it's not a rhetorical question, what are the limits to resisting Francis? And their limits to resisting the post-conciliar errors. What are those limits? Did this organization go too far in your mind? And please, when you discuss this in the comments, please try to do so with some charity. I know I don't like having to say that, but a lot of people get very uptight about this. And remember, this is Holy Saturday. So please pray for everybody involved in this. Pray for me, and pray, as I always say, for the church. Let me know what you think of this comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So to sharing this on social media, that helps too. And again, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.